What is up, guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here, and today I'm going to discuss some cards that I personally think you guys should be picking up for the upcoming meta, given that bombshell of a ban list that we just received. Like, there were honestly just so many changes on the list, so much like information to process that it can be like really hard to figure out. So what I'm going to do here is break down what cards I personally think are going to make good investments moving forward, kind of more like a short-term perspective here. These are cards that I think are going to increase in price either within the next week or maybe even like the next month as the meta kind of shapes and develops. Just like a quick disclaimer here, obviously I'm not going to be right about all or some or even like any of the cards that I'm going to be talking about here. So if you do decide to make some investments in certain cards, please do so at your own risk and do your own like due diligence and research before you go in and buy things. However, these are cards that I personally am going to be looking at moving forward. Okay, so before we get into the actual cards, let's take a quick look at what the meta is probably going to look like moving forward. Tombox actually did an in-depth discussion on what he thinks the meta is going to look like in his damage report video. So if you guys want to take a look at what decks are probably going to be top tier, gonna be big in the upcoming format right out the gate, definitely go and check that out. But yeah, so as far as top tier decks, we have Sky Strikers, Thunder / Guard Dragon variants depending on how that deck adapts. We have Subterror, Salamangreat, and Pendulum Magician. The only one I disagree with here is Salamangreat. I don't think Salamangreat has quite enough consistency to stay as a top tier deck. It's probably going to be pretty strong. Like, the deck can still pull off the same combos as it did before. It's just that it's going to be a lot less consistent because you just have the one Gazelle and you only have the one circle to search for that missing combo piece. I just don't think it's going to be able to pull off that same combo with enough consistency given the ban list hits. But you know, that's okay. We'll still consider it to be one of those better decks in the format. For higher tier decks, we have Altergeist, Marincess, which is going to be released in like a week or two. I think sneak peek is this upcoming weekend. We have True Draco, Magical Musketeers, Madolche, Orchist, and Cyber Dragon. I feel like all these decks are actually like really strong contenders as like those high meta decks like tier 2, tier 1.5. I'm a bit hesitant to put Altergeist on the list. Like, before Multi-Faker came out, Altergeist weren't even like close to being meta relevant, right? Like, the deck was really bad. So it'll be interesting to see, like, with one Multi-Faker, I know you can search the Multi-Faker, but is that enough for the deck to still function and be competitive? I don't know. I don't really think so, but like, we'll see. And finally, for rogue decks, we have like a bunch of like other options, right? We still have decks like Dinosaur that aren't included here. But directly from the ban list, we have Gravekeepers, we have Inzectors, we have Monarchs, and we have Infernoids. Inzector Dragonfly is actually kind of interesting, and it's the one I'm most worried about. Like, Inzectors pulling off their old shenanigans, so we'll see how that goes. Also, Gravekeepers, I think, are like low-key like a really good pick. Because like no one likes getting hit by Royal Tribute turn 1. And Gravekeeper can set a bunch of back row, set a monster, or summon a monster. Royal Tribute, get rid of like a bunch of hand traps or like whatever combo pieces you might need. So yeah, it'll be interesting, but like we'll see obviously how that deck performs. Alright, now before we get into anything like archetype specific, I want to first talk about some cards that are a bit more generic that I think are going to go up in price. Personally, I think that back row removal is going to be like a huge thing this format. Super important, like way more important than it was previously. Over the last little while, we've seen like a lot of combo decks that spit out huge boards of monsters. But like looking at some of the potential top tier decks just now, so like Sky Striker, Pendulum Magician, and Subterrors, as well as some of like the mid-tier decks like Salamangreat, True Draco, and Altergeist, I think it's going to actually be extremely important to either destroy or nullify your opponent's back row in order to play Yu-Gi-Oh! So that being said, Denko Sekka is the first card I want to discuss. Denko's a card that has always had a lot of blowout potential. Like, against the right deck, a single Denko Sekka could win you the game single-handedly. It forces your opponent to respond to it, or else it gives you like a free turn to do whatever you want without fearing your opponent's back row. So with decks like Sky Striker and Subterra running around, I think that once again it can be a very, very strong side deck choice in something like Pendulum Magician, and allow you to combo off with more consistency, and not having to worry about those back row. However, you're going to have to be careful with cards like Dingirsu, because when Dingirsu's summoned back, it can still send Denko to the graveyard and like kill it. But yeah, so currently Denko is only around like $5 to $6 a piece. I could definitely see if it like picks up and draws a lot more attention, I can see it hitting like $10 really, really easily. Next up, we have Twin Twisters. I think this is a card that every single Yu-Gi-Oh player should own at least 3 copies of. It's just like that strong, right? We always seem to see Twin Twister being played in something. Obviously, there are some decks that are affected by the discard cost more than others, but I think that the ability to remove 2 back row in 1 card just by discarding another card is huge depending on the matchup, right? It's versatile in that you can set it during your turn and pop your opponent's back row during their turn, like during the middle of their turn or during your opponent's end phase, or even if you're going second, right? It lets you combo through your opponent's board because you can pop certain floodgates at just the right time directly from your hand. So like the problem with like investing in the card though is that it has so many printings, right? We have 2 supers, the original and the Megaton reprint. We have the Ultra, we have the Secret, and we have the Common. So like I don't personally think that this is a card that you should be buying a ton of copies of. If there was a copy to invest in, I think it would be the Secret, which is currently sitting at around like that $3 to $5 range depending on what platform you're looking at. Secret Rare being the highest rarity, obviously the one that's best to get, but I think that because of how many different prints there are, it's not going to see too high of a ceiling in terms of price. I think that if you don't have it, it's definitely something that I would pick up now, because it's going to see a lot of play this upcoming format, and people are going to try to juice you for it. If you do happen to have extras already, I think that the price is either going to stay steady or gradually increase in price over the next little while. And finally, we have Cosmic Cyclone. I'm actually like a really big fan of Cosmic Cyclone. I think that this card is actually pretty undervalued for what it is, even though like it doesn't have a YouTube channel named after it. That gets a special mention because it gets rid of back row permanently by banishing it, right? So specifically, I'm thinking that if you can banish a multi-roll, your opponent can't retrieve it back with Kagari, which I think is a pretty big deal, because that like could single-handedly win the entire Sky Striker matchup for you. It's also a pretty decent option if you're playing a deck that like maybe is very combo dependent and you don't want to have to give up that card to get rid of back row for Twin Twisters. So yeah, so currently commons are sitting at around $2. We have the Megaton secrets and the original secrets that are only like $3 to $4. I think that's where the real value is. I think the secrets look a lot nicer than the commons. So if I were you guys, I would be picking those up. Alternatively, we do have the ultimate rares, which are currently like $28 to $30 a piece, which I actually think is a bit undervalued. Like for me, I picked up my set at $50 because I was like, wow, this card's such a strong card, but it's so cheap right now, like I may as well pick up a set. And I remember people were like laughing at me, they're like, wow, why are you paying $50 for Cosmic Cyclone? That card's awful. But yeah, so like it was definitely worth it in retrospect. Like even back then I was only paying like 80% of market value. But yeah, so I think Cosmic Cyclone, definitely a card that has a lot of room to climb in price. I could easily see it being a lot like Twin Twisters, right? So where the commons are going to hit $5 a piece, where the originals and the Megaton secrets are going to hit that $7 to $8. And I think that the ultimate rares even could jump up towards that $40 price point. Okay guys, so kind of a smaller piece here. We're going to have a quick discussion about Rockets. So we do have the Rockets structure deck coming to the TCG in August. That's about a month away. And 2 cards that I want to look up here are Quick Launch and Magna Rocket Dragon. If you're gonna pick up and play the deck, these are 2 cards that I would definitely look into getting the highest rarity of. That is the original first edition prints, because those versions of cards, right, like the original first ed highest rarity is always going to be a version of the card that's in demand. even though the cards get reprinted most likely in the structure deck coming up. Right, there are going to be people who want to bling out their decks. They want the nicest possible version of the card, and these two are the things that are currently seeing play at 3 in OCG lists. That being said, there will definitely be demand for these cards going forward. Like right now they're pretty cheap, right? Like quick launch is only $2 to $3. I think the original is $3. The reprint secret is only like $2, so you can still pick that up. And Magna Rocket Dragon's only like $1. So I actually think that the Rocket deck is probably gonna see like a fair bit of success here, like a reasonable amount, because like we have the Guard Dragon package still alive, and Tempest is newly off the ban list. So I think the deck is actually gonna be able to put some pretty cool boards together. Another thing that I would look into is Dragon Shrine, specifically the secret rare. This card has a few different lower rarity printings, right? Like it has 2 commons and a rare printing, but like by far the secret is like the nicest. So everything else is cheaper in price except for the secret, which is sitting around that $3 to $4 price point. And Dragon Shrine is a card that is played as a 3 of in the Rocket deck in the OCG. I'm actually not too familiar with the OCG meta or cards that haven't been released here yet, so take this with a grain of salt. But like looking at trends in the OCG is one of the main ways that I look for cards to invest in, because a lot of the time TCG follows very similar patterns to the OCG, right? So if people speculating see that a card is seeing a lot of play in the OCG, they'll naturally buy it out here because they assume that it will see play here as well, which is always going to drive the price up. A very good example of that is Reptilian Vasky. This card, I don't know if you guys remember this, but this was an out to Draco Sack because you had to tribute 2 monsters with like 0 attack points, and it was a 2800 body. So you tributed 2 Draco Sack tokens, and then you could kill Draco Sack with it. And it was seeing side deck play in the OCG as an out to Draco Sack, but like here it never translated. Even though it never translated, the card still jumped up in price quite a bit. So it's always really important to follow those OCG trends. Even if the card isn't like going to see play here, you're still going to be able to trade off of those price actions. But yeah, that's like a piece of Yu-Gi-Oh history for you guys, I guess. But yeah, for a card that's like a 3 of, that's only currently $4 in a potentially top tier deck, I can see this card like roughly doubling in price for the secret rare. I can easily see it hitting that $8 to $10 price point. So at $3 to $4, I'd definitely be grabbing your sets now. Alright guys, so a couple of pricier cards here, which I typically actually tend to stay away from. I mean, like personally, I prefer to look at what I'd call like penny stocks in Yu-Gi-Oh, cards that are super cheap and have the potential to like double, triple, quadruple in value. But that's a discussion for another time. Anyways, Borreload Savage Dragon was going to be included in the Megatins because it was from Savage Strike, but they decided instead of Savage Strike they were going to put in Dark Saviors, so we should be safe from this card being reprinted for a little while. Moving forward, I think that Savage Dragon is actually going to see quite a bit more play as something that combo decks can like synchro into and end boards on. It can get like pretty big, and it has the potential to give you multiple negates. I mean, like, it's pretty accessible in that LP can like bring out Destrudo and then you can make like a synchro play there. But it's also generic, which means it can be summoned in something like Pendulum Magician, right? But currently the card's sitting at around $20. I think that that's close to what its like high value is. I think that the card is slowly going to trend upwards towards $25, maybe $30. If anywhere, I think it would be reprinted in Dual Devastator, but that's like a fair ways off. And I don't think we're going to get a confirmed reprint of this card in that set, even if it is included, until closer to the release date. So I do think that the card is going to trend upwards towards maybe that $25, $30 price point, depending on how much play it sees. I don't think this is a card that I would invest in multiple copies of, because it's too close to what its highest price point would be. But it definitely does have the potential to increase in price considerably. Not high enough to justify investing a lot into, but if you don't have your copy already, I think that at the given price point, it's actually pretty safe to get that one copy of and have it readily available to use, because it will see play in a fair number of decks. So the other card is another Synchro monster. We have Ib the World Chalice Justiciar. I think that this card is actually going to be a super important combo piece and extender in a lot of combo oriented decks. For example, you can play it in Guard Dragons, you can play it in Dinosaurs, and you can search like World Legacy Guard Dragon or World Legacy Succession, and then you get to also extend your combos, right? So as a card that, like, it's just like Signet Mining, right? It just came out in Dark Neostorm, so it's extremely unlikely that the card is going to get reprinted anytime within the near future. And it's actually really cheap right now, right? The card's only $10 for like a really recent Secret Rare. I think that this card is going to see a lot more play, and I think that once it does, it's going to hit like 15 to 17, definitely really easily. $20 price point really soon, depending on like the amount and the extent of which it sees play in the meta. Alright, so now we're going to look a little bit into the next set, Rising Rampage, and we're going to talk about Marincess. They are a water-based Cyberse archetype, and personally I think that like in a raw meta where we don't have anything that's clearly top tier, there's a very good chance that we're going to see a lot of players try to pick up and play the deck. The deck's actually used in the anime, and like from what I've seen from the card art, it features like cute like anime girls, so I think it's probably gonna draw like a bunch of players towards it. From what I've seen from the deck online, doing my little bit of research here, it only has like its first wave, so that version of the deck is going to be playing like a very back row heavy style. I see it using Paleozoics and frogs to make totally awesome, and you control the deck using back row. So that being said, like if you want to play the deck, I think I would definitely go to try and pick up some of the stuff now before the set officially drops. So right now, Ulti Swap Frogs are sitting at like $80, like $78 I think is the lowest price on TCG Player right now, which is absolutely ridiculous. I would absolutely not be picking that card up. I would sell it if you have it. But yeah, be happy with commons, it's fine. But yeah, so super rare Dupe Frogs and Ronin Totems though are really gradually disappearing from the market. So each of them is within that like $2 to $5 price range. At the same time, Paleozoic Dynamiscus, it's kind of like a karma cut. You discard a card from your hand to banish a monster on the field, but it's also a Paleozoic, so it's a trap in the graveyard that you can summon back when a trap card is activated. They're both seeing that really gradual buyout, and right now at $2 to $4, they're more affordable, but as we get closer and closer to that deck being released, and then more and more people wanting to play the deck, I think those are gradually going to increase in price a little bit more, so they're going to hit that like $5 to $7 price range that so many OTS pack supers have hit before. So yeah, if the Marincess deck is something that you want to pick up, or if you're intrigued by it, then I definitely think that while you can get those cards for relatively cheap, I would go and grab them now. Just as like another side note here, Signet Mining is definitely a card that you guys should be picking up. I actually have a bet with a couple of friends. I told them Signet Mining is going to hit $40 before the end of the year, and they called me crazy. So we have a bet that if it does hit $40 by the end of the year, they owe me packs. So if any of you guys are rich, just buy out Signet Mining for me. I'll give you guys a shout out or something. I'm kidding, don't do that. But yeah, so we actually saw Signet Mining increase in price recently. So it was like around $20 to $25, and then it jumped up to like around that $35, $37 price range. But then after seeing Salamangreat get hit, the card has dropped down closer to around $30. However, I think that this is just a short-term price drop associated with the Banlist hit on Salamangreats. So I think the card is still going to jump up in the near future. The card is from Dark Neostorm. It's not going to be reprinted anytime soon. And it's like a generic search card for like level 4 or lower Cyberse monsters. So I think that the card it definitely has a lot of future potential, and it's definitely something that if you can get it for around that $20 to $25 price point, I would be picking up your playset of. Alright guys, okay, so here I need to apologize to people for what I said in the Megatin discussion video. So when I said to sell the deck for Cyber Dragons, what I was talking about is the cards that were reprinted or going to be reprinted that should be sold. So that is Rev System, Hertz, and Seeger. Those ones that are getting reprinted, you should sell sooner rather than later. However, I do think that Cyber Dragon Nashter and Cyber Emergency are two cards that you should definitely look into holding onto or even picking up. So as we get closer and closer to the Megatin date, the demand for Nashter and Cyber Emergency is only going to go up, because more and more people are going to want to play Cyber Dragons with those cards so much more easily accessible. So yeah, so Cyber Dragon Nashter is really cheap actually. It's only around $5, whereas Cyber Emergency has actually jumped up to around $25. So the ban list came out, the deck didn't get hit. The deck's definitely looking like a very solid tier 2 deck moving forward. I actually think that fairly soon, like within the next 2 to 3 weeks, Cyber Dragon Nashter is a card that's going to be bought out. It's super cheap. It's only $5. It only has the one printing. And I think that after it gets bought out, it's going to settle for around $15 to $17, maybe $20. So if this is a card that you want to play because you want to play Cyber Dragons, I would go ahead and pick this card up now. Cyber Emergency is a little bit different, right? It's already at like a fairly high price point and it was released like quite a long time ago. So it's different because I would actually not be too surprised if I saw this card being reprinted really soon. But given that we just had OTS Pack 11 spoiled for us, I actually don't really see where that reprint is going to come in. So it's kind of hard to say. That being said, like, it's not something that I would go out and actively try to hoard or buy multiple copies of. If you can get them for cheaper, maybe like between $15 and $20, then maybe, but not at $25. I wouldn't go out and pick up like a bunch of copies. If you want to play the deck, I'd say go ahead and pick it up now, because as we move towards the Megatin date, it's gonna steadily climb up in price as more and more people are looking for the card. Also, if you'd have it, I would hold on to it for a little bit longer and then wait for the price to go up before you sell it. Just be careful of like those reprint announcements. But yeah, this one's a little bit of a trickier one because we don't know about the timing of the upcoming reprint. Okay, and finally, we have my choice of a cheap deck core that I would be investing in. So something that I like to do periodically is take a look at older archetypes that are fairly cheap and pick up the deck in max rarity. I've done it with a few different decks, right? Like I've looked at Sylvan, I got Yang Zing, and then most recently I got Magical Musketeers, which actually worked out pretty well because I wasn't actually expecting them to get a Link monster that soon, but like it's fine, it worked out for me. So that was pretty cool. But often all it takes is like that one really good card to push an archetype over the edge. Like the way that Double Helix was good for Spiral, we all remember that really degenerate format, or the way Guru was for Subterror. Anyways, so right now the deck that I'm looking at is Cliffort. They just got Scout back to 3, so that's great. It gives them a lot of consistency with Summoner's Art, Scout, Sacrifice, all that good stuff. The deck can play aggressively as a Pendulum deck, but at the same time it can slow the game down and control it with a back row because it can play a lot of Floodgates, so it's pretty versatile. And furthermore, the deck's like really cheap. Most of the cards you can get like the highest printing of it for like $1 or $2, but they're still holos. And I think the most expensive card in the set is like Secret First Ed Cliffort and Monolith, which I think might be like $5 or $6. If you don't want to spend that, you can also get the supers. If you get the deck in lowest rarity, you're paying like maybe $10 for the deck core. But yeah, I just think that having those cheap accessible deck cores is always really like a good idea, and with Scout just coming off the ban list, I think that now is actually a really great time for you to do that. So yeah, I think it's a good sleeper choice that could catch a lot of people off guard too. Right, the deck can play like a lot of Floodgates pretty easily. So it could potentially just show up as a rogue deck. I know that the deck just got Cliffort Genius, but like maybe there's another card or two on the horizon, who knows. But even if the deck like doesn't do anything, I think the deck's a pretty cool deck core to have. It's really safe. The art on most of the art cards is pretty cool, and they're all like, they're mostly hollow, so that's even better. But yeah, either way, it's just like a pretty decent deck core to have and hold on to. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. Hopefully I've given you guys a couple of ideas for different cards that you can invest in. Remember, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions, so if you're gonna do any buying or investing yourselves, just use your own brain. Anyways, yeah, so I was originally gonna do like a pretty large market watch episode, but I'm actually gonna save that for tomorrow, because what I want to do is give the market a chance to settle down for doing an episode like that. I mean, there's no point in going over certain cards that are just like bought out and they have zero quantities on the market and just telling you guys, yeah, this card's bought out, right? So like giving the market an extra day to settle down, allow people to repost cards, that lets me get to you guys the most relevant information, and it lets me make the most accurate prediction about where prices are going to be moving forward. Anyways, so yeah, that's it for this video. Banlists are always really fun because of how much like the market moves. I know for me, it actually turned out really well this time. I was actually holding on to like a lot of different Prince of Solemn Judgment. I had a bunch of Tempests. I had a few Trishulas. I actually had like 5 or 6 copies of Daigusto Emerald, and I had like 2 copies of Ultimate Rare Strata. Shout out to Paul, who just sold me his like maybe a month ago. But yeah, I didn't really lose much on the list because I actually sold all of my dangers a while ago, so go me. Anyways guys, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to give me a huge thumbs up. If you guys want a bit more of an idea about what the meta is going to look like moving forward, be sure to check out Tombox's damage report for this ban list. I'll hyperlink it at the end of the video here. But yeah, also, comment down below what cards are you guys most looking forward to picking up in light of the new ban list. What cards do you think are going to be super relevant, or that you guys just want to grab? And if you guys want to see more from MST.TV, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You know we love you guys for it. And yeah, that's it for me. So until next time, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.